Now let's see how far we get on the Herpa bingo card. Having a heavy delay? Check. Having an issue and still being sold? Check. Herpa showing that a decent box design is possible only when they're forced to by the airline? Check. And being able to show you this model thanks to our great partner here on the channel, Jumbolino Model? Check. And if you want to see more great models, well then check them out. There's a link to them in the video description below. With that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at a Boeing 777-300ER of Emirates. And at the front of the box we find a cutout, so we can get a glimpse of the aircraft model inside, and on top of that we have the Emirates branding. And now this box proves that Herpa actually can make decently looking boxes, but unfortunately they also choose only to do so when they're forced to by the airlines themselves. So here we got a bunch of information, specifications about the aircraft. We have a lovely rendition of the aircraft as well. And it is great to every now and then have a reminder that Herpa can do good things. It's just unfortunate that they always have to be forced to do so. And here she is, the very first Boeing 777-300ER, featuring the new standard livery of Emirates in scale 500. Now this is now completing the trifecta of Herpa Wings models with the new Emirates livery. We of course first got to the A380. The Emirates was supposed to be the second model, got heavily delayed and then overtaken by the A350. But now we also have the 777 to complete these three aircraft types of the airline. But how has Herpa done with this aircraft model? As I alluded to in the beginning of the video, there is at least one issue with the model, but we will go through it and take a look at everything the model has to offer so that you can, well, make up your own mind if this is a model worth being in your collection or not. As always, we started to around the aircraft model with a look at the tail section, where beyond the vertical stabilizer find the updated Emirates branding. It is, of course, also the flag of the UAE. On the fuselage, well, there we then have the full registration code of the aircraft, and yeah, that's it. I mean, we could mention the detailing in the cabin door, but other manufacturers have way more detailing here, so maybe let's not waste more time around this section and move towards the very tail of the aircraft. Here we at least have a bit of detailing around the APU exhaust. And here at the front of the aircraft and across the fuselage we then find the writing of Emirates, both in English and of course also in Arabic writing. We have a few markings underneath the writing of Emirates, some static boards or some hatches. Looks quite nice. Definitely adds something to the 777 fuselage. We have an Emirates branding, a logo in the cabin door, and we find the aircraft type specification just underneath the cockpit windows. The cockpit section itself then, apart from the aircraft type specification, offers of course the cockpit windows with the metallic edges around them and the window wipers, but it would have been nice to have a bit more detailing around a 777. It is certainly a large enough aircraft, and we have of course now seen with the 777 from Herpa Wings, at least with the freighter versions, that they have added pedal tubes. Would have been lovely to see that on this aircraft model as well. Now, the engine nacelles have been kept in all white, just as most of the fuselage, but we do have the silver leading edge, we have the safety markings, and the Emirates logo also very prominently displayed here. The physical detailing of the engine nacelles, I think, is overall quite nice. It is, of course, not quite correct with the GE90 engines. They're a bit too squeezed, but I still think they look nice, especially also here from the front. Very, very nice. You can see the engine fan blades. On the fuselage, just above the wings, we then find the emergency exit has been printed on, and that leads us straight to the wings, which we should also take a closer look at. Starting off with the top side, where we have the different flaps, slats and spoilers carved out very nicely. We also find the markings for the emergency exit, and then this thick black line, which is our outer marking of the main landing gear, a visual orientation for the pilots when taxiing on the ground. The underside of the wings then has some more nice physical detailing and the full registration code of the aircraft. Now, when it comes to the landing gear, that is the standard landing gear that you can expect on all 777s from Herpa Wings. And I think for the main landing gear, that looks fine. And also the front landing gear actually looking pretty decent. But I am disappointed that we still don't have any printed details around the front landing gear in 2025. Now, on the belly of the aircraft, we of course find an Emirates logo or branding that is immediately destroyed by Herpa Wings for a hole in the fuselage for a stand that is not included with this aircraft model. But in a past review, I said that I reserve my right to determine whether Herpa has actually used the right red tone here on the model. Now, we can compare it with the Emirates A380 and A350 in the new standard livery, and I think the color tones here are pretty much identical. I still think perhaps tendency towards the red being a slightly bit too bright, but at least we do have fairly consistent colors here across these three models. A bit more surprising consistency here from Herpa Wings is when we look at the set dome, a place where Herpa is normally very inconsistent, but in this case, with the placement and the size of the set dome, I think Herpa is spot on. And then last but not least, we do also have the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here at the back of the aircraft, and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Boeing 777-300ER in the new standard livery of Emirates from Herpa Wings in scale 1 to 500. And what can we say about this aircraft model? Now, you might be tempted to say, well, Bongo, didn't you state at the beginning of the review that there's at least one issue with this aircraft model? And if you do so, you would be absolutely right. Yes, I did say that. And there is. I mean, I'm not talking about the usual issue with the GE90 engines of Herpa being too squeezed. That is a general issue we see with all aircraft models, or all 777s, I should rather say, of Herpa Wings. But actually, this aircraft model has another issue, an issue that we see with this aircraft model, unfortunately also with quite a few other aircraft types from Herpa Wings currently in scale 500. Now, if we look at the engines here, we can see that, yes, there is ground clearance and it is enough, but it is not quite as much as we are used to with 777s. Now, what is the issue here? It's not so much with the placement of the engines, even though that's maybe not ideal, but it is much more to do with the wings. They are put in at an almost 90-degree angle, and that is obviously way too flat. Now, we can compare it with an older 777 from Herpa Wings, in this case a Qatar Airways 777, and you can see that the wings are, well, angled a bit more upwards, and this is how it should look. I don't know why Herpa currently is incapable of doing so. Many of their models are currently coming with fairly flat wings. It is a rather annoying issue, and it really takes out a lot of the fun with these models because it is such an avoidable mistake from Herpa Wings. What is also a bit disappointing is the fact that we, for example, don't have any petter tubes. Now, we have to be fair here. This aircraft model was announced quite a bit before the latest 777 freighters from Herpa Wings, which do have the petter tubes. And I think that is the main reason why it doesn't have it, even though the models now technically were released pretty much around the same time. But my hope is still that with future also passenger 777 models from Herpa Wings, that they will have these petter tubes added. It would certainly have been a great upgrade to this aircraft model if they had added them in this case. What can be said positively about this aircraft model is the print quality overall. Yes, I would have liked to see more details, but there aren't really any smudges. There don't seem to be any print line issues. I mean, okay, it's hard with a livery that is comprising of so much white, but still, there are no print lines. It's a positive, and it has to be noted by Herpa Wings because they far too often do have print line issues. The 777 mode of Herpa Wings, apart from the currently very flat wings and the squeezed GE90 engines, I think is still pretty good. So that's a positive in my world, at least, as well. So now that you have seen the model and seen all the issues or non-issues, I hope that this will make it easier for you to make up your mind whether this model is worth your time and money. And since we are talking money, we should of course also mention that Herpa thinks that this aircraft model should retail at 45 euros. That is obviously a ridiculous price for such a model, which is also why most retailers will sell you this at a discount. And if you can find it for a decent discount, then sure, it might be worth having in your collection, but I would actually recommend you to wait, because this is certainly a model that will be re-released many, many times, and the future releases might then have these petter tubes that I mentioned, and hopefully Herpa will by then have solved the issue of the too flat wings. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this review, then please feel free to leave a like. If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? With that, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.